Hello everyone. This week I received a Technics SL-1310MK turntable. The tone arm lift on this unit was defective. Neither the automatic nor the manual lift would raise or lower the tone arm. I removed the cartridge and began disassembling the unit. In this device, the drive is mounted on a floating bearing, and I had to remove several separate housing parts. The drive unit with the automatic mechanism was also removed. This made cleaning easier. I removed the tone arm unit from the drive unit, thus gaining access to the tone arm lift. I quickly discovered the defective plastic part. A well-known flaw in this device. The part shrinks over the years and then breaks open. So I had to disassemble the tone arm unit further. Several screws needed to be loosened and the control sensors removed. To make the work easier, I also disconnected the audio cables from the connection board. These cables are really very thin, and you have to be very careful when working with them. This allowed me to remove the anti-skating unit, and after removing a few more screws, also the mounting plate for the tone arm lift. Now I was able to examine the defective part very closely. A clean break, which caused the lift to fail. I then disassembled the actual mechanism for the lift. Basically, it only consists of a few parts. However, these were completely gummed up with old grease. So I performed a rough cleaning with isopropanol. To avoid damaging anything, I used a cotton swab for the more delicate parts. After the initial cleaning, the individual parts of the tone arm were placed in an ultrasonic bath. I use a mixture of distilled water, isopropanol, and a few drops of soap. This reduces the surface tension of the water. Using a soft brush, I also cleaned the casing and circuit boards of the dust that had accumulated over the years. And of course, the tone arm itself was also cleaned. Now it was time to address the defective plastic part, which was no longer available. A colleague was able to recreate the broken part of the tone arm lift using a 3D printer. It wasn't a major problem for him. He simply made a copy from a sturdy plastic, using the dimensions of the broken part. The printed part fit perfectly. Now the assembly began. Everything could be connected to the new part without any problems. The tone arm pivot was lubricated with a special silicone oil. This oil is very viscous and thus ensures smooth raising and lowering of the tone arm. All the small parts of the tone arm lift were reassembled. These included a spring, some washers, and a retaining ring. Finally, the tone arm had to be completely reassembled. Everything simply had to be put back together in reverse order. And then it was time for a test. The tone arm rose and lowered smoothly and gently again. Once again, a defective part was able to be repaired. Now it was time to reassemble the record player. The tone arm had to be reattached to the drive unit with the automatic functions gearbox. It was important to ensure that the corresponding guides aligned correctly. The casing was reassembled. The positions of the tone arm and the tone arm lift lever must be observed during this process. These must not obstruct the assembly. Then, the electrical connections are re-established. These include connections for the audio, drive motor, and sensors. The cables are secured with a cable tie. This ensures safe operation within the housing. The cover of the mechanism can be easily reinstalled. It only requires a few screws, which are readily accessible. The floating drive unit is connected to the housing cover from below via insulators. Additional screws secure the drive and the automatic transmission. A final cover and a few more screws complete the assembly of the case. 2 drops of oil should be added to the drive bearing after a few hours of operation. Now I could reattach the head shell with the cartridge to the tone arm and install the stylus. The tone arm height could now be adjusted. There is a screw on the lift assembly for this purpose. This screw can be used to adjust the tone arm height. With the tone arm raised, the stylus should be only a few millimeters above the record. Now, adjust the weight and anti-skating settings for the stylus being used, and a function test could be performed. Power on, push the start button, and the tone arm lifted and moved correctly towards the record. It lowered gently, and the first notes began to play. And that's exactly why I love this hobby. Not just listening to music, but bringing music back to life. For more reels of hi-fi goodies from the good old days, subscribe to my channel and give me a like.